All right, guys, we were back again. Dynamic Man Podcast, episode 49. It's been a minute, guys. It's been a minute on this show. Settled in Poland now, doing what I can to get this place set up. We still got some of the good camera equipment in the process of getting shipped over here. I'm just posting this on X right now. Just in the process of getting a lot of the camera equipment over here. I'm hoping to be able to spruce this up a bit. I was also hoping to get a studio. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if that's going to happen in the end. Some stuff fell through with the office, in other words, that I was going to have a dual purpose studio with. And I'm going to see what I can do here to spruce this up first. And then, of course, if this isn't working so well, we'll figure it out. We'll improvise. But like I said online, we are going to be doing this show every day, every weekday this time. Now, obviously, there's going to be some shows that get skipped. There's life gets in the way. This show was supposed to happen yesterday at this time, and my daughter was sick. We had to take her to the doctor. That was the only appointment available. So it was pretty much like, yeah, you're gonna get the consistent content. And then, first day I can't even do it. But it's also me, guys. I'm not perfect, and schedule consistency on this kind of stuff. This is an edge for me. It's an edge for me to keep it constant. So, but I want to aim for every single day at this time. Just short shows, 30 minutes. So with that, let's get into it. There was a post that went, I won't say viral, but had some traction. I am not going to be doing any boot camps in Poland, and I don't actually do boot camps at all. I did boot camps very early in my career as a dating coach, and as a married guy, I just did not enjoy doing it. It's like you have to really get into it with talking to the women and wanting to play with that energy with other women, and I didn't want to do that. And so I had to create my own business model that worked for me in my life. But I know a lot of great guys over here who do boot camps in Poland, and I hope to meet a bunch of them in person. I've known them online for a while. So if you need any recommendations, drop it in the comment on the video, and I'll list some of their ats on Twitter, and you can get in touch with them. I heard some pretty good things. So there's a post that got some traction the other day from Metatrav, and it's about Looksmaxxing. Now, Looksmaxxing is this trend. I'm going to read this first. But if you guys know Looksmaxxing, this is the idea that your looks are what really matters with women. And I'm going to talk in two different directions about this, okay? But this is what he said. Looksmaxxing is coming for us all. The game theory is clear. We've hit a Nash equilibrium with male looks. Same competitive escalation women have navigated. The race that started with shaved armpits and arrived at Botox is now targeting men. IG, TikTok, dating apps are funneling everything into this reality. Your generation determines whether you can escape this. Boomers and Gen X are safe. Millennials will split in half. Some will face failed marriages unless they Looksmaxx. Same way fat girls get penalized now, while others will stay soft and pudgy without consequence. Status maxing won't protect you if it ever did for your sex life. This isn't a joke. My dad walked around his entire life with the classic boomer belly hanging over his belt. My mom never cared. Didn't register in her aesthetic framework. My dad had generational pass on the belly without it damaging his prospects. My generation has been a completely different game. Flat stomach or you're out. Out of shape meant zero prospects. I watched my best friend start testosterone and not at grade 9. Grew up around Canadian hockey players who treated their appearance like a competitive sport, blah, 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 whatever. In my city, you can't be out of shape or unstylish. Zero results. That same escalation is coming for faces. Golden era bodybuilders created the fitness paradigm where being unfit makes you a loser. Looksmaxxers are doing the exact same thing for facial aesthetics. If you haven't adapted to the fitness paradigm yet, you're getting steamrolled. Distribution keeps skewing towards fewer males capturing female desire. You might dodge this in your late 30s, but under 35, you're cooked. All right. So a couple of things for this. And I have my own comment on this on X, which you can see. I'm not going to read my comment. I think that's a little bit lame. I can just talk about it and flesh it out, right? But there is truth to this. there's truth to this that I don't like to admit. I think people are being disingenuous if they don't see that the example that Minitrav gave there, for example, where you have like the boomer dad with the gut, right? Um, that didn't matter a lot for women back in the day. I think that there's a lot of truth to that. Now, let's also keep in mind that people were not as fat in the past as they are now, and we're young and we don't have necessarily like a, we say the boomer dad with his gut hanging out. Well, how old was the boomer dad when you're thinking about this, right? Did he have a gut in his 20s and 30s? So I think that, there is definitely some contextualization here that we can talk about because people did used to be a lot thinner when they were younger. But suffice to say, the focus on looks is definitely real. No men talked about their fitness from an aesthetic standpoint up until, unless they were a dandy, as it was called. It was not, there were some aristocratic people maybe who did this stuff, but by and large, men did not care about any kind of um, aesthetic so much. That was not their thing. Their thing was providing for the family, being tough, being men, right? Being strong, tough, working hard, and not being a pussy, not crying about anything. And that's what women were drawn to, and the men looked as they looked. Um, I also want to make a side point. Women always cared how they looked, but if you look at old footage, and Med Gold, my mutual Med Golds talked a lot about this. Women today are so much hotter than they used to be. It's an objective fact. It's an objective fact. A lot of interesting questions why that is the case. I don't think it's all makeup technology. I don't think it's that. Uh, and I don't even know that it's all nutrition. I got some esoteric theories on it too. But the bottom line is women today are substantially hotter than they were. Even women who were really fat and lost a lot of weight when you look at them afterwards. And the women in the past were not necessarily fat. So interesting question. I just make that aside because that kind of begs the question of aesthetics in general, how much things have changed, how much this is an impact of some other stuff going on. But without digressing too much, it was not a big deal for men really to focus. Like bodybuilding only became a thing maybe in the 70s, but really more the 80s, and only became more popular the last 20 years, right? Rather than being a super, super niche thing. And it's not that women never found those kind of men attractive, but that was not what was defined culturally as being a man, right? Women obviously like the guy who's jacked and who looks attractive and everything. Okay. So I don't think that we can discount the trend because as more men focus on their looks, then you not focusing on your looks puts you at a greater disadvantage than you did. Like in Poland, for instance, I can see that a lot of the men here, especially from the like in the 30s, in their who are in their 30s or late 30s, they definitely don't have to care about this stuff. Poland's equalizing with Western sort of cultural trends, but it's been about 5 to 10 years behind, let's say. So they are like, you definitely see a lot of guys here who, don't pay attention to how they look, and they're with very attractive women. That's still a Slavic thing. And I'm going to say there's two reasons for that, right? So you have this reason of the fact that this hasn't been a cultural trend. Um, but there's another reason too, right? And that's that the men act a lot more like men by and large than a lot of guys in the West do. And so this is the thing. It is absolutely true that the more men focus on how they look, the more of a liability that becomes with your dating life, especially because we are becoming a much more superficial, like dating culture is really cooked. It's really fucked up. Just being blunt here, it's really fucked up. Um, And a lot of people in the dating world are, especially the stuff that makes it on social media, really fuels this, entirely focused around trying to, um, are you like super hot? If you're super hot, then that's like the value proposition. People don't have value propositions in online social media takes for their personality or their game. They don't have value proposition for anything else except how much they can stunt, how much they can show off, and how good they look. And even if social media is fake, even if it's going to get faker with AI stuff, right? There's absolutely no question that looking good is going to matter. It matters more than it did. And you can say, well, that's only on dating apps, and it's true. It's not only on but it's true that dating apps, it's a major phenomenon on dating apps, but a lot of people use dating apps. Now, I do want to talk about, second half of this big term trends, but let's focus on right now. Yes, looking good matters. Now, that said, do I think the future is clavicular? Do I think the future is hammering your fucking face in with a hammer to try to affect the bone structure of your face? No, I don't think that that's the future. I actually think that we are at a collapse point in this entire narrative. And again, I'll get to that when we talk about the future of attraction. But looking good, trying to impress aesthetically, is a feminine trait. The feminine is the one that wants to be, I don't want to say wants to be desired, because obviously men want to be desired too. But the feminine, right? The feminine is the one that wants to be cherished for their beauty, right? The beauty is the thing that's supposed to inspire the masculine action. So if you're trying to be a pretty boy, you're being pretty, which is a feminine adjective. It's an adjective typically used to describe women. Shane, it's okay. If you want to just do a little bit, little chiseling, right? It won't hurt. Will hurt a little bit because it's a hammer on your face, but so this is the kind of, you know what I mean? Like, we do need to, you want to take care of yourself and you want to look good, but you absolutely do not want to get too carried away with this, because where does it lead? Look at clavicular, and look at even what Metatrav said in that post, which was, I thought, a negative argument. He's talking about a 14-year-old going on testosterone, and sterilizing himself basically when he was in high school. Talking about that like that's the future. I don't think clavicular is the future. Clavicular is implicitly not the future because he has destroyed his possibility of having a future. You understand that? There's that famous rat study, and to be honest, I don't know whether they're vouched for this, but um, it basically was like a way of trying to introduce in rat populations the same sort of like polarity inversion that you see. Um, and what ends up happening is the men just kind of look like pretty boys and nobody reproduces and they die off. I don't know whether this is true or not. Sounds a little bit too on the nose, to be honest. But what I will say is that there is absolutely no question that, like, people like clavicular, they're not getting into relationships because they're not capable of sustaining relationships, because they are so focused on the validation that they are getting from women. And honestly, I don't want to be like going against game, because game is, especially in hindsight, seems a lot more healthy, but it's a very similar phenomenon to what happened, let's say 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago in the game crowd before the red pill started to take more of that over, right? The initial thing when it came to male female dynamics was all game. But in a similar way, people learned game to get validation from women. Looksmaxxing is just an offshoot of that. So If you think that Looksmaxxing is the future of getting a wife and having a family, then you're wrong. If you think Looksmaxxing is the future of getting casual sex on dating apps, you're right. You're right. But are you sure that dating apps are really the future? I know that that sounds a little glib and maybe a little naive. I'm not suggesting dating apps are going to go away, but there's a what we're experiencing right now, and we're really in the beginning of it. It started after COVID, the internet in general, right? But the internet is becoming a slop zone. Dating apps are becoming a slop zone. There's very low trust. You don't know anymore whether or not you are interacting, who you are interacting with. You really don't. You don't know when someone messages me, I won't name him, but I was getting a lot of invites to go on some podcast, and it was like I was getting spam these invites, and they're from all these different people, right? But it's not the same person. And what I mean by this, not the same person, it's like they're gonna have like Cassandra, and like it's really like then you see Amit or something like that. Like it's some Indian. It's no disrespect to the Indians, although whatever, you know what the fuck deal is. This is a whole thing. Like I don't know who I'm talking to. I don't know what I'm looking at pretty soon. Joe Rogan. This is true though, Shane. Discernment has always lacked. It's the number one difference making skill. Discernment is everything. And I teach discernment, and it's very important to learn, but I'm thinking about this from big picture, right? Is everybody going to be able to develop discernment? I think that what's going to ultimately happen because of stuff like Looksmaxxing, because here's the thing, with AI, with everything, with influencers, right? On one hand, we are hitting this point where everything is going to like, you have to be the most perfect person. And believe me, I deal this with clients all the time. They have a great girl. Oh, but yeah, she's an 8, but maybe I could get a 9, right? There's a 9 out there. And then they doubt whether they should move forward with them, and it just keeps, okay, now you have to be absolutely perfect, right? Putting aside all the emotional issues that come with that, putting aside the fact that, just because you can get someone who's a 10, let's say looks wise, does not mean that they're going to have any other requisite quality that you want. It's just about validation again, right? But the problem is that when you get to that certain point, eventually it's like, well, wait a minute, this can't continue anymore. And I've been saying this for a long time. I see a massive divergence occurring in humanity. And it's not that I don't think that the internet is not going to be used by people, although maybe some people, that's true. But I think that it's going to become much more about community, like in group, people who know each other. And there's going to be online connections to that. But we're moving much more towards decentralized networks of people. And that's not just something when it comes to work. If you're an entrepreneur or your friends, it's also going to start applying to who you date. Because people who are really looking for something serious are less and less likely to find it on an app. Just the way it is, just less and less likely to do it because the apps have started to become coded with low trust. And as AI starts to really hammer and mesh itself in those apps, harvesting people's attention, I think you're going to see less and less people use it, or the people who you are going to see use it are going to be the people who are not doing that inner work, that deeper work, who are really trying to seek something real. So, as V Money says here, being so obsessed with your looks as a man that you'll bash your face with a hammer is pretty fucking gay. It is pretty fucking gay. And the results are actually identical to being gay, except for you get a woman. But I'm going to tell you something. In the bodybuilding community, the guys who really got cut, like beneath 11%, right? most of the attention they'd start to get was from men. And so I work with a very, like, personally for years with a very he trains celebrities personally. And I was one of his few in-person clients. I don't even know why he did it, but he's a good dude. And I would hear these stories, right, from other big name bodybuilders, and a lot of them would actually end up, they'd go down the hedonic treadmill, right? So they got to get hotter girls, hotter girls. But then it's like, well, why am I putting so much work into getting girls? I'll just, these guys are interested in me. So then they fuck a dude. And they kind of became gay, actually, because in the end, a gay guy is going to be the one who cares the most about how you look as a man. In the end, you're going to start attracting more men with your physique maxing than you are women. And this is my point. Women do really care about looks. And so I do think that, they do care about it today because the polarities are somewhat messed up. I don't blame women, by the way, for wanting to have a guy that they find attractive. I think that that's reasonable physically. I think that's reasonable, especially when a woman maybe doesn't need the same degree of provisioning. But don't think for a second that those looks are like, if the second a woman feels that you are really about the validation for how you look, she is not going to find you attractive as a man. She's not going to find you attractive. Viscerally, she will not find you attractive. Women, that's why women like a guy to be cut. They don't like to see him work for it. They might respect discipline in the gym, but vanity they can't stand. Women cannot stand vanity in men. It is a very, very effeminate trait, and it makes them think, and also they want to be the one who's, aside from like a quick fuck maybe to see what it's like, they don't want to be with a guy who cares about how he looks, who's directed at himself, because they're the woman, they want to be the one who's looked at. And that's the reality of the situation. On a candid level, well, I would say that looks have risen in value versus provisioning, let's say. Looks, and they still might create a gatekeeping effect. How you make a woman feel remains number one. And I think that the amount that has grown in importance for women has not changed. Now, when you're on a platform like a dating app, you may not know that. You may not have the ability to show her who you really are because all you have is your text game, and even to use your text game to express who you are, you have to still get your foot in the door first, right? You have to still get her to swipe on you. But in person, it is that personality. It's that personality that does it. It's how much you've worked on yourself as a man, how much you act like a man, but it's also how you make her feel as a woman. So take care of how you look. How you look is a reflection of yourself. It's a reflection of yourself. And there's some things you can't help. Like, as people online love to point out with me, look at me. Look, I'm losing my hair. I'll probably get a hair transplant at some point this year. We'll see. It's a little vain. I could just shave my head. But I like my hair. I miss it, but not as important as how I show up as a man. It's really not. It's just really not as important. And my wife's not going to leave me because I'm going bald. So whatever he's talking about, and it's not because I'm a millennial. It's because I know how to make a woman feel a certain way. I know how to make my wife feel a certain way. That's why she's not going to leave. And that's the same thing in any relationship. If a woman feels really happy being with you, now if you have terrible hygiene and you're a slob, okay, fine, but you don't need to have cut abs. I'll tell you that. You absolutely don't. Maybe you're not going to get away with the boomer belly as much as you used to be able to, but you'll be able to get away with 20% body fat. I'm not saying that's good. I'm just saying most women are not going to throw you out for 20% body fat if you're showing up. That's not a real thing. If that's the point, it's not a real thing. Huge dick maxing is the way. This is a whole other thing, right? I'm just going to close on that on this one because even that is like that's just a subset of look maxing. Hey, I'm not saying you can't benefit. Most people might appreciate an extra inch, but I mean honestly, as long as you're not small, it's enough to do what needs to be done for a woman. It's not the main thing. And just like with the super obsessive looks maxing, right? That is something that guys care more about than women do. They really do. They absolutely care more about it than women do. And having a really big dick does not mean that you're going to be able to satisfy a woman. The best aspect of it, besides from, the most valuable aspect of it is it increases your dominance factor. Psychologically, it increases your dominance factor. But there's a lot of other ways that you can increase your dominance factor in the bedroom without having a massive one. So it is not no, and I know you're joking, but there are a lot of people who are not joking. There's a lot of people who are not joking about it. Um, and look, improve yourself, right? Improve yourself as you can, but there's a limit. Too much hurts. There's a good zone. I've never, unless you have some super super fucked up and perverted woman, like no woman ever wants more than 8 inches. That's enormous, right? For a woman. And if you're 6 or 7, a woman's gonna think that you're really good sized, especially if you're 7. And she's gonna think you're fine if you're 5. It's only like beneath that then maybe you start to get into like you can only make her come from certain positions. Anyway, that's a whole different topic of conversation. I don't want like you guys are distracting me from the main question here. But yeah, I think in the end, some of this looks maxing stuff is good because it's making guys maybe pay a little bit more attention to their health. Men would neglect their health traditionally in the past to provide for their family. So I think that, you know, there is a competitive aspect here that you don't want to be the married guy who's got a belly, who is not, strong than the single guy around. You don't want to be like that. So it's going to make married guys have to take their fitness more seriously. But there's a big difference between taking your fitness more seriously and being some narcissistic, looks obsessed person like clavicular, because those people are really not going to make it. They don't know how to form relationships with other people. The future of attraction is human, male female polarity and interaction. It is going to be, on a practical level, it's going to be meeting people through high trust groups. We are going to fragment into multiple different tribes. My astrologer friend, Paul Publishers, was the first one to talk about this. I didn't see it at the time, back in 2020. He's been totally acquitted on his comments. That's Pluto in Aquarius, by the way, if you care about astrology. But it's happening in the dating sense. It's weird to be living through because I can see it now. And I can see the inputs of why it's happening. I didn't quite understand. But we are going to fragment into micro tribes of people, professionally, socially, and romantically. It's going to be very similar. And it's going to be in-person and online overlap. But low trust vectors of meeting people, of hiring people, of working with people, of befriending people, it's not going to work anymore. If someone does not match your tribe, you're not going to be doing business with them. That's how I see it happening. You're not going to date them. If you do anything with them, it's going to be very transactional sex. Everything that is outside of your tribe is going to be very, very transactional. But what does that mean? That means that Social status maxing is actually going to be really important, but it's going to be what's your status within the tribe, right? And there's always going to be, you know, connections to the mainstream because you're not going to have complete separation. But that's going to be the main relevance here. That's the main relevance. So I'm inspired to go hit the gym, cut another, you know, maybe cut 10, 15. I could do 15. If I lose 15, I'm gonna be fucking cut. But so maybe I'll get there this summer. That's a good New Year's plan. But I'm not. And maybe I'll get a hair transplant. Maybe I'll do it. But I'm not going wild, guys. I'm not going wild with this stuff. I don't. You know, I'm focused on trying to build a legacy, trying to build a new world, right? Deepen my relationship. And if I'm obsessed with that extra 2% body fat and that's taking away time for me to be with my wife and connect with her, I'm certainly not helping my marriage. All right. I love you guys. I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow, what am I talking about tomorrow? Do I have it on here? Well, I don't know. I don't remember what it is, but it's going to be good. It's going to be good. Actually, it's going to be a good one. I got a good lineup for us. So see you tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Take care, guys. I love you.